Welcome, everybody. Happy Friday. Another edition of the Wine and Ad Tech podcast. Today, we have a very special guest, Michael Auda, here to talk about bourbon. He is a bourbon expert. I know there's a big bourbon craze and people love bourbon. Michael is one of Chicago's most beloved chocolatiers by day, and by night, he is a paddle tennis menace. Going around the Glenview and surrounding suburbs, hitting balls rapidly at people's faces, hoping to improve his series all the way until he gets to play, Roger Federer in a game? Is that how it works?
Series one,
Roger Federer, Series 1. So, Michael, thank you for coming on. Why don't you tell us a little bit about, why you're a bourbon expert? Just a brief description. I know we're going to go into how you approach the craze and how you go about buying bourbon and what you like. But what started this whole thing?
2006, 2007, graduated college in 2004. My brother-in-law and I kind of got into bourbon together. And, the liquor stores in Milwaukee, Autos, they had, end caps of Buffalo Trace Antique Collection. And we didn't know what we were drinking at the time, but anybody that knows bourbon knows that's the hard to find stuff. So we really just started drinking really good stuff right away and really enjoyed it. And the next year we went in there was a limit one sign. And then the following year after that, it was gone. So it kind of just, it took off, and we kind of, something that we did together and really enjoy.
Yeah, and I know, this was unplanned, but we both have Packers helmets here. And in fact, the first time I tasted Pappy Van Winkle was at your house after a Packer game, and I had no idea what I was drinking. And you'd poured us each, you and me and our other buddy, a taste of it in a shot glass, which was to be drank like they do in the Old West, where you drink out of a shot glass, like it's a glass. I had no idea, so I just took it and shot it. You were apoplectic, to say the least, but that was my first experience with Pappy, and I thank you for that. So not a bad shot. So what are you drinking these days? What do you got? What's been doing it for you recently?
Yeah, right now I've got some good bottles open right now because of the pandemic. I've got a Elijah Craig 18-year-old. It's one of my favorites, made by Heaven Hill Distillery, one of the big distilleries out in Kentucky. Nice oak flavor on that guy. I also have oaky flavor. I've got a Michter's 10-year-old rye. I'm a big fan of Michter's Distillery. This one has notes of, it's a full-bodied bourbon, medium-bodied bourbon, medium to full. Kind of some flavors of orange and nice rye spice. So that's what I've got open right now.
I think we were drinking that on the golf course the last time we were out there together.
Yeah, we were drinking the Michter's 10-year-old regular, the Michter's 10-year-old regular bourbon. So
got it.
Yeah, but I've got about 20 bottles open or so, and I'll drink a couple ounces here, here and there.
Here and there. I cracked this guy open. This is a Sancere. You can find it at most liquor stores, definitely at Binny's, o.Domaine, Bernard, Fleuriet. And this was just like a great Sauv Blanc grape expression. Definitely crisp summer wine. You drink that one before you get into the heavy stuff, or you drink that with some of the apps beforehand. But if you like Sauv Blanc and you want something a little bit more complex, I recommend that Sancere. Okay, Mike, talk to us about bourbon. Tell us a little something.
Bourbon. So it's pretty crazy now these days. It's hard to get, some of the rare stuff, but it can be intimidating at times. So bourbon for me is, we've got 4 kids now at the house, as you know. You just had a child. Congrats. We just had a child. Mm-hmm. So, one of my hobbies is drinking bourbon to stay sane. But I guess some tricks today about how to get the bourbon. It can be difficult at these liquor stores. Most of the rare stuff now is in the back. It's not even in the glass case, obviously not on the shelves. So my recommendation to actually get the bourbon is to, if you're really into bourbon and you really want to start drinking some of the rare stuff, is to just shop at one liquor store, spend some money there, make sure that you develop some relationships. That's important. So that's what I've done. So I pretty much shop at one or two stores really. At those stores, the general managers know me well. It doesn't hurt that I sell chocolate for a living. So I, bring in chocolate, which probably helps get some rare bottles, but spend money at one store and it should open up some things for you, develop some relationships. Bourbon itself,
and I know you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I know you study. You're like reading about it constantly. You're reading about like release dates, things like that. What are some of your favorite places to go to check out some of the release dates or read about reviews, things like that?
So I subscribe to Whiskey Advocate and learn a lot through that. It's a great magazine. I also, there's a big bourbon scene on Instagram. And so what I like doing on that is understanding when these releases are coming out. Also understanding some bottles that maybe I wouldn't know of. I just found some really good stuff. Smoke Wagon is a new guy out of like Nevada that I would have never heard of. Bottles like that I wouldn't have heard of if it wasn't for like an Instagram page or something like that. So there's different avenues to look at, Google it, literally if you like a Michter's, search Michter's release dates and things of that nature. That can go a long way.
Great. Yeah. Find a Chicago bourbon guy on Instagram to get a pic of all of Mike's treasures. He has quite a haul in some of the pictures. Yeah. I know one of you're famous for your annual March Madness bourbon bracket that takes you about an hour to set up in your driveway.
That's true. And to do that much work for something, you need to have a little bit of a buzz. So, there's a little bit of buzz going on when I did that last time, but it was actually the full bracket. So it was legitimately what it would be if every team played each game and got to the finals. So what that showed me was that I have way too many bottles of bourbon in my collection.
You're a great person to be friends with because I get to sample all of them whenever I come over. So it's great.
Is true.
So, Mike, I know you're really interested in ad tech. Do you have a question for me about ad tech?
I do. I want to know what your stance is on brand safety in the DSP space.
Oh, man, that is funny you should ask, Mike. So brand safety is really, really important at all levels of advertising, and especially in the DSP space and programmatic when you're buying across thousands of sites at once. How do you make sure that your message is in a brand safe environment? So I have a couple of things. I think sometimes people get a little too hung up on this. Most of the legitimate DSPs, the tier one DSPs that you're talking about, ours, Google, Amazon, Trade Desk, MediaMath, some of the big ones, Amobi, they're going to have brand safety built in, brand safety measures. There's a self-policing within the industry between the supply partners and us as the demand partners to make sure that we're delivering the message in an environment that is at the very least, PG-15, right? Some of the websites out there that are brand safe for the industry, you maybe wouldn't want to cruise with your grandparents, but there's certainly sites that are appropriate to add advertising to. Now, adding an extra layer of brand safety is something that you can do if there's a very specific reason why. But I think sometimes the national brands put a really large emphasis on this, and so smaller brands do. But people need paper towels, whether they're reading about the new Seth Rogen movie where he, smokes a bong or something like that, or whether you're on the Chicago Tribune reading about politics or things. I think the only times I really think that brand safety is something that people should put a lot of emphasis on is when it has a direct impact on your business. So if I was an airline, I would make sure that my ads weren't being served alongside content that speaks ill specifically of airlines, or perhaps about a plane crash, or perhaps about a crazy passenger or something like that. Of course, the cruise lines don't want to end up on a page about bad cruising, but if you're selling cars and And if you're a restaurant and you're just trying to appeal to your customer base, I don't think you need to put as much emphasis on brand safety as you think. Again, when you're buying traditional media, you have a little bit more control over what you are next to, but at the same time, brand safety to an extent is in the eye of the beholder. So all DSPs, though, have some extra levers you can pull, and pretty much everybody uses the same partners to do that. So there isn't a ton of differentiation, and it's really up to you and your strategy team how much you want to push it.
Talking about brand safety makes me want to drink bourbon.
I bet it does. So let's talk about bourbon. So Mike, what do you like to drink and or listen to or watch at the same time? Do you have a music and movie and booze pairing?
Yeah, I mean, I Grateful Dead's my favorite band, so really just any bourbon and Grateful Dead. I'm drinking a Old Fitzgerald. You may have known your mom and dad to drink Old Fitzgerald. This one is again from Heaven Hill, and nice decanter bottle, good presentation. But I've been drinking that and listening to a lot of Grateful Dead lately. Food pairings. I know we talked about food. I don't really eat a lot of food with bourbon. I'm usually, I like to cook, as I know you do as well. So when I'm prepping meals, tend to drink my bourbon neat and, get ready for the meal and making the meal dinners. And if I was going to drink bourbon during dinner, it'd probably be barbecue, like a full rack of ribs or pulled pork or something like that. That'd be my go-to.
I noticed that Old Fitzgerald was a bottled in bond. Is that correct?
Bottled in bond, yes. Would you like to hear about bottled in bond?
We actually had my buddy come on, and he told us all of the requirements for it to be labeled bottled in bond, but it is a theme on this show. We love bottled in bond, and it's a perfect segue into what I like, which is the old Grandad bottled in bond. This you can find anywhere. It's typically under $20. And this is a great bottle, and I suggest drinking this and also listening to the Grateful Dead, which is the theme of this show as well. And I have actually created a playlist I will link in the notes here for the Grateful Dead sort of Old West themed songs. They are a band that has created a universe that is sort of a dystopian cowboys and gamblers type Old West, much kind of like Westworld, if you will. I think the producers really missed out on playing nothing but Grateful Dead music during all of those old Western scenes. But I think, drinking old Grandad bourbon out of a dusty glass and listening to the Grateful Dead, that's the way to do it.
Awesome.
And then from a food pairing, I got this one. So this is one of the weirdest wines I've ever drank in my life. So it's a special bottling, but it's of the famous Pax Syrah. So Pax Syrah, Pax became famous, Pax Mahle became famous. He had 100-point Syrah recently, and that became a big deal. You open this bottle up and it smells like green olives. I'm not kidding. I've never smelled a wine that smelled like green olives. You get a little bit of that on the taste. It definitely opens up and smooths out, so it's not as sort of salty and stringent as the first couple sips. But skirt steak, our local butcher here in Glenview has the best marinated skirt steak on the planet. So I get a bunch of that. Forza Meat, baby. I get a bunch of that. I throw that on the grill. I drink this weird, like super full body, unfiltered Syrah that has like its own sort of green, weird flavor to it. And it's wonderful. So that's my move.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
as far as a bottled in bond bottle, I will say one of my favorites is Henry McKenna. This one, 2019. This won there it is. I think I got you that bottle.
You bought me this bottle, yep.
So for the money, I think this is probably one of the best bottles you can buy. It's about a $35 bottle. It won the San Francisco Spirits Whiskey of the Year Award in 2019. We're not just talking about bourbon. We're talking about entire whiskey portfolio, which is pretty impressive. I think it was only like the second or third whiskey bourbon to ever win that competition outright. It's a little bit harder to find now because of that award that it won, but when you're talking about value bourbons, I would say that's probably my go-to. And then the other one is Eagle Rare. This is a 10-year-old single barrel bottle from Buffalo Trace, $34. Really, really good bourbon. If you're just starting to get into bourbon, or if you want an everyday sipper, something you can share with friends, I highly recommend Eagle Rare 10-year-old. So a few recommendations.
And then you've got a couple of rare bottles next to you there. I know what your favorite one is, the Eagle Rare 17. That's your all-time favorite.
So this is what got me into this habit. This is Eagle Rare 17-year-old. Really, really hard to find. It's part of the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection portfolio. Comes out once a year, usually around Christmas time. The amount of bottles that they're making, it's like a couple thousand bottles. I mean, it's a very small amount every year. I also have, if you like a good wheated bourbon, so I like my bourbon a little bit sweeter. I do like the oakiness of it, but I like a little sweetness to it. So a lot of people might know the Weller line. This is their high-end Weller bottle. So like a Weller 12-year-old, a Weller Special Reserve, Weller Antique. Well, this guy right here, William Weller, is also part of the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection, and it's incredible. It's high proof, about 125 proof, a lot of flavor, good stuff. And then, some stuff that maybe everyone would know. Everyone knows Pappy. So this is a Pappy Van Winkle 23-year-old. One of the more rare bottles out there right now. I think it's number 1 or 2 on the rare bottle list. So I'm not a huge Pappy Van Winkle guy. I mean, I really enjoy it. It's great. I think it's a little bit overrated. I think it's something that people, when people think about rare whiskey, they immediately think about Pappy. So, fortunate enough to have some Pappy Van Winkle bottles. I think you could buy some other stuff at some good prices. And then finally, my
this is your holy grail, right?
Yeah, is the 16-year-old A.H. Hirsch Reserve. This bottle's special. It was distilled in 1974. They don't make this anymore. The plant has since closed. It was made in Pennsylvania. Again, it has since closed. So those bottles, what's rare about that bottle is any bottles that are out there, once it's gone, it's gone. It doesn't exist anymore. And so that's my special, most special, rarest bottle. I will say on any of these bottles, I don't pay secondary prices. So if I can't get it at the retail cost from a liquor store or, from someone else, I won't pay secondary prices, just because the bourbon craze right now, they're absurd. Those secondary prices are pretty crazy. I also don't sell my bottles. For me, it's a passion, a hobby for me. So I'm up for trading, but I'm not up for selling them. It's just something that, guys like you get to reap the benefit of drinking. And, my kids, when they get older, some of these real special bottles. So.
And I know as we close it out here, I know you oftentimes when you're able to get your hands on a bottle you're going to open, you'll pour a little splash in a cylinder and take it back to the manager at the liquor store, and that's always got you in good graces because A, they know you're not selling it, B, they get to taste it.
Yeah, and it's the right thing to do. I mean, it's the right thing to do. I mean, these guys don't get, you'd think they get to taste all this stuff, but they don't. And so, that's a good point that you bring up, right? I mean, I put it in a little sample jar, I bring it in, so they know that I'm not like a flipper or anything like that. That's another little secret of being able to get more bottles. That's a good call out, Michael.
Absolutely. Well, hey, I pay attention sometimes when you're talking to me. All right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. Comment below, follow Chicago Bourbon Guy. If you want to talk bourbon, he doesn't post all that often, but certainly if you like bourbon and want to talk about it, he will talk your ear off about it. And leave any comments you want in the section. And if you've got a charity suggestion, now's a great time to give money to charity. And you know that the show always gives money. So please give a suggestion for a charity that I can donate to in your name, and we will do so. Thanks a lot, Michael. Go Pack, go, buddy.
Thanks for having me on. Go Pack, go.